Hey guys, this is Joe D with the Roundhouse Report. Today is Saturday, May 11th at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This video has to deal with Palestinian statehood and that they've already had a state. So, I'm going to start out with what happened, how this all kind of rolled out. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, occupied Gaza for many, many years. In 2005, they pulled out. No double entendre. They pulled out of. They unilaterally left militarily, but also they yanked a lot of Israeli settlements. They made them leave too, and they were not happy. So it was a pretty big controversial thing in 2005. They had to uproot these. It's the settlements in the West Bank. They had settlements in Gaza. They uprooted those Jews, the Israelis. They left, and they left behind. Well, first of all, so the Israelis unilaterally left Gaza. The first thing that happened was Hamas and Islamic Jihad went to civil war. That's the first thing they did. I've always heard, and I don't know if this is necessarily true, but in that part of the world, when you're dealing with Islamists, when you're dealing with extremists, they only listen to violence. Talk is cheap. So the IDF left, the Israelis left, they pulled all those settlements out unilaterally. And what the Israelis did was they left behind a lot of high-tech, advanced civilian infrastructure. I'm talking about high-tech irrigation systems, water purification plants, things that would have helped the people in Gaza. As I just said, Hamas immediately, they had a civil war with Fatah. This is how these people tend to operate. Hamas kicked Fatah, not Islamic Jihad. They fought against Fatah and they kicked them out. So Hamas was the ruler of the Gaza Strip. The first thing that they did was they destroyed all the advanced stuff, the irrigation systems, the water purification plants. I mean, and the list probably includes many more, but those are the main things that have always been talked about. And the first thing that they did when the Israelis left is Hamas destroyed it all. They said that this is Jewishness. I don't know what they're just anti-Israel. Like the Israelis built this, and we hate them, so we're going to destroy it at the detriment of not only us but our people. Okay, so Gaza in 2006, once they had a civil war and they kicked out Fatah, which has since moved to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. That was the prelude. That was the first Palestinian state. See it for what it is. The Israelis left. They had elections. Hamas supposedly won. They won the elections in 2006. But the rival party they weren't happy with, so they went to war. And Fatah left. So now it's just the Gaza Strip is purely under Hamas control. And by the way, they haven't had elections since then. Now, this is very, very important, and most people don't understand this. By Israel leaving the Gaza Strip and allowing self-governance under whomever turned out to be Hamas, these people, this represented the first, it was not an official state by any means. It was a blockaded province. But it was an experiment. It was an experiment as to what a self-ruling, like for real, indigenously self-ruling without outside interference, how would a Palestinian state may look. And a lot of people don't understand that Gaza, the Gaza Strip, is the first example since 2006, 2005, 2006, as to what a Palestinian state may look like. Okay? It was an experiment. What did Hamas do? Well, I told you, first of all, it had a big civil war with Fatah, and they kicked them out. And at that point, I mean, de facto speaking, I mean, it wasn't official in the UN or anything, but at that point, on a de facto level, they became a state. I mean, they had their own territory, they had their own governance, uninterrupted by Israel. And as far as black ops and election interference, I don't think that happened. Otherwise, Hamas wouldn't have remained in power for so long. So right now, the issue of a Palestinian state, a two-state solution, whatever you want to call it, has been brought into the UN General Assembly. It's kind of a big deal. So, under the auspices of, it's not Hamas, but the Palestinian Authority, which, by the way, the Palestinian Authority, which technically is an offshoot of the PLO under Arafat, Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian Authority, the PA, they haven't had elections in 19 years. They're massively corrupt. Most of the money that goes into the PA, which is supposed to help the Palestinians in the West Bank, goes into the pockets of those who supposedly control the West Bank, who have political influence in the West Bank. No elections for 19 years, mass corruption, and you want to know something that a lot of people don't know? The Palestinian Authority pays you to kill Jews, to kill Israelis. If you kill an Israeli, you are paid for every Jew, for every Israeli that you kill. The Palestinian Authority actually sends you a check every month. If you've killed one, I don't know, maybe it's a few $100s. If you kill two, a couple hundred more. Three, oh, now you're getting the big money. This has been going on for decades. This is nothing new. It's just most people don't understand it, or rather not understand it, but they're just not aware of it because no one wants to talk about it. Everyone's anti-Israel, pro-Palestine. They're rooting for the underdog. Well, we saw what the, quote, underdog did in the Gaza Strip. What did they first do? Number one, like I said, they destroyed all of the advanced systems, irrigation, water purification, etc., that the Israelis had left behind in order to try to help them get on their feet. First thing they did, hey, this was built by Jews. We're destroying it. All right. That's the first thing they did as the head of the Gaza Strip. And keep in mind, they haven't had elections since. Oh boy, I mean, this is such a loaded issue, but if, let's say Sam, make up my name, Sam. Let's say Sam went to a checkpoint in the West Bank leading into Israel proper, and they usually use knives, and because they have a hard time getting a hold of weapons for various reasons, but the people who actually attack, you'll see whenever checkpoints are attacked, it's usually with somebody wielding a knife. So if you kill a Jew, an Israeli, kind of one of the, I mean, they do have a large, relatively large Muslim population, which they include into their society, and they are allowed to vote and they have rights, just like the Jews. So if you go to a checkpoint leading out of the West Bank and you use a knife and you kill a Jew, you kill an Israeli, they will pay you a certain amount of money each month for that. If you kill two, you get more. Now, generally speaking, these people are killed in the process. It's at a checkpoint. The IDF is there. They'll kill a Jew, maybe two, if they're fast enough. Using a knife, it's hard to kill somebody using a knife. You have to know what you're doing. So let's say they kill two Jews, a quote Palestinian from the West Bank. Let's say they kill two Jews at a checkpoint, and they're killed by the IDF. Guess what? Their family, since the checks can't go to the person because they're dead, the family of that person receives a pension check every month on par with what that person would have gotten. So let's just say it's, the monetary values are so different. I'm going to use the U.S. dollar as an example, and the U.S. dollar is worth way more than whatever they have. But let's just say that for every Jew you kill, you get $100 a month. You kill 2 Jews, you get $200 a month. You kill 2 Jews and you're killed in the process. Your family, your household, your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, they'll receive that $200 check every month. The more Jews you kill, the more money you're given. And this is the Palestinian Authority. These are the people that are supposed to be leading the charge on establishing an actual Palestinian state. Okay, 2 issues. Number one, in order to officially, there's already been things in the UN. I believe they accepted them as a kind of a spectator with some privileges in the UN, which is absurd. It's just rewarding the October 7th massacre, which everyone's forgotten. No one remembers that. And I'm not going to go into it. If you know basic the news, you know what happened on October 7th. And so in terms of the Gaza Strip, that was an experiment. They were given their own land, their own authority, and look what they did. Just look at what they did. They spent 20 years building tunnels, building advanced networks of communication. They've been arming themselves via Iran, via Sudan, via Hezbollah. But Iran's that's the headpiece. Everything else is just tentacles. So Hamas has been funded by Iran since their introduction as a governing body into the Gaza Strip. All right. So Iran's been supporting them. And look what they did. There was a war in, I think, 2008 with Hamas where they were firing huge amounts of rockets into Israel. Like no reason. They just did it. That was in 2008. There's been so many wars. I hope I'm getting the dates right. 2008, there was a missile blitz against Israel for no reason. 2011, there was another missile blitz. Israel went in. 2014, there was another attack by Hamas. 2018, there was another attack by Hamas. 2021, there was another attack by Hamas. And by attack, I mean they weren't capable of actually invading at that point, so they were firing thousands and thousands of rockets. It's still an attack. Who would the United States deal with, like, every couple of years the Mexican government, like the people in Mexico, firing tens of thousands of rockets into Texas? No, that wouldn't. The United States would take care of that pretty quick. But Israel's not allowed to. So they've, what's his name? Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray is a leading advocate, and he's a realist. And he said, you should look at some of his videos. He's very good. And to quote him, he's British. So, Israel is the only country in the world not allowed to win a war. And it's true. They're not allowed to win. So Hamas, they're given their opportunity for statehood in a de facto sense. They were funded by Iran. And all that they did, every few years, they would open up a missile blitz. And Israel would respond. I believe it was in 2014 that it was so bad that Israel actually invaded the Gaza Strip. And they didn't punch very far into it, but they punched enough into it to try to mow the grass, is what they call it. Every few years, when Hamas becomes too powerful and the grass grows and they launch attacks, you go in and you mow the grass. You destroy their capabilities and you put them back 5 or 10 years. All right, well, what happened on October 7th? 1,200 Israel. I don't care if you like Jews, if you like Hamas, if you like Palestine or the idea of a state. I don't care. These are the facts. Hamas, the quote Palestinians, were given a state. And on October 7th, they invaded Israel and they slaughtered 1,200 civilians. And one of them was at a rave concert where over 200 were killed right there. I'm not even going to talk about the rapes, the torture, all the hostages brought in. I'm just going to tell you that, think about this. Like, I don't know if any of you have used drugs, but if you're at a rave concert or if you're at a psychedelic-esque type of a music festival like Bonnaroo or something in the United States, Bonnaroo, you're probably on some kind of a psychedelic. And then all of a sudden have these dudes fly in on these, I don't even know what they're called, but it flies. It has two wings. And I'm really looking dumb here. I don't know what these things are called. But they flew into this music festival and they just started shooting everybody. And imagine if you're tripping on acid and that happened. My goodness. But that's just a side point that I wanted to mention. You saw what they did on October 7th. They went house to house and they killed Jews. There's no disputing that. The Israelis made a 40-minute compilation of what Hamas did on that day. And they also brought in independent reporters, including Douglas Murray, to look at exactly what happened. And the people who saw what happened, and this video was also played, I believe, to the UN, but I don't know. But it was most certainly played before the Senate and the Congress. And people walked out and they said it was chilling. They had no words. That's what an independent, quote, Palestinian state, end quote, did. They slaughtered Jews. It's the worst genocide since World War II. And you've heard that over and over again, but guess what? The United States has yet to condemn what Hamas did on October 7th. They've yet to condemn it. The United Nations has not condemned what Hamas did on October 7th. Nobody. Now, remember when the Russian amphitheater got shot up a few months ago? The next day, everyone was condemning it. The UN, the United States, everybody. 1,200 Jews are slaughtered in their homes. Like literally, these were small kibbutz communities where they were farmers, they were civilians. When that happened to them, no one, like even the United States, nobody brought down a declaration against Hamas condemning it. Nobody did, and they haven't to this day, which is something to keep in mind in terms of how the world views Israel. The United Nations has not condemned them, even with all the proof from the videos that Israel provided, and they're too disturbing to put, like, you can't put them on broadcast TV. It's just too messed up. They showed it to them. They didn't condemn. Showed it to the U.S. Senate, the Congress. Under Biden, I think if we had a different president, there would have been a condemnation, but nobody in the United States officially has condemned what Hamas did. So that's kind of where I'm at. They had the quote, Palestinians had their chance in 2005, 2006. And then ever since then, it's been about 20 years. They have had unilateral control over the Gaza Strip. The resources coming in to rebuild were put into a 300-mile tunnel system. 300 miles. What? A 300-mile, imagine all the concrete and the expertise that went into that. Well, that stuff would have been otherwise used to rebuild infrastructure. But they used it as they wanted to use. And so they've already, all this talk about what would a Palestinian state look like? Just look at the Gaza Strip over the last 20 years. That's what it would look like. Look at the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Mass corruption. They pocket most of the money and they pay people to kill Jews. That's how it would look on that end. So all this crap about making a Palestinian state is absurd because there already has been. Now the PA is under the authority of the Israelis insofar as the Israelis technically, quote, occupy the West Bank. But the Gazans, Hamas, had full unilateral control. And look what they did. They carried out a huge, huge massacre that nobody has yet to condemn. And now they were recently brought in as I don't remember the exact term in the United Nations General Assembly, but as a sitting member type of a thing where they don't really have a lot of control, but they're recognized as a state. They're recognized as a state, and they have no state. But so, like, technically. So they're recognized as a state, and they do have influence insofar as they can, put forth an investigation here, bring up an issue here, bring up an issue here. So the atrocities that Hamas did, which are not unavoidable, you can try to blind yourself all you want. It happened. And a reward for that, everyone is talking about making an official Palestinian state as a reward, essentially as an award. Hey, all you have to do is invade Israel, kill a whole bunch of Jews, take a bunch hostage. the entire world, which is not surprising, the entire world within a week or two starts to turn against Israel. And this has been the status quo for 20 years. And they want their own state. Well, they de facto had their own state, and we all saw what Hamas did with that state. Do you think it'd be any different? They were duly elected in. Do you think it would be any different? And of all times, right now, to talk about a Palestinian state, including the introduction of a, quote, Palestinian Authority in the UN, which was recently passed, that's a reward. Because Hamas slaughtered so many people and caused so much damage and took so many hostages, and Israel responded, and they responded in force. Well, guess what? Oh, wow. The Hamas, they're champions across the Middle East because now they suddenly have a seat in the UN. It's a bizarre, like in the temporary S, you're kind of sitting on the sidelines, but you do have a say. That's their first prize, Hamas. The second prize is that they may actually, not by they, I don't necessarily mean Hamas. Obviously, they're under attack. But some kind of any type of a, quote, state, an official state, would be a direct, given this just happened 7 months ago, it's all because of the massacre on October 7th in 2023. If they were given their own state, it's like all you have to do is kill a bunch of Jews and have them respond, have Israel respond, and they will respond in force. And then you get the world behind you, because historically, I've studied Israel since its inception in 1948. The world turns on them after about a week or two. An atrocity will happen, and then a couple weeks later, right after October 7th, all the Europeans were like, the UN supported Israel, the United States supported Israel, the world supported Israel, and then 2 weeks later, genocide. They're committing genocide. Well, it's not Israel's fault that Hamas hides among civilians. But I'm going on 22 minutes. I doubt anybody has watched all of this. If you have, I would love it if you put a little smiley face. It lets me know that I'm actually doing something and I'm not just speaking out of my ass into the wind. That I'm not pissing into the wind. That I'm actually reaching at least one person. And so, and to end, if this nonsense about creating a two-state solution right now, this has to happen in the future. It does. It needs to happen. But right now, it would be directly rewarding what Hamas did on October 7th. So other terrorist groups like Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, they have a blueprint. Hamas will go down if they manage to get a partitioned independent state. Hamas will go down in history as the champions of the Arab anti-Israel Palestinian cause. How do they do this? By massacring Jews. I'll leave it at that. I hope you liked it. I know it ran a little bit long, but there's kind of a lot to cover, and I tend to repeat myself. I hope you guys liked it. Leave a smiley face. That way I know someone watched it, and I appreciate it a lot. This is Joe D with the Ryan House Report, and I'm out.